North Carolina is coming off of a 1 seed and returns consensus first-team All-American RJ Davis. But are we about to get a new-look Tar Heels team in the post-Bacot era?
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoop show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and you're joining me at the place to get your college basketball content every single day. Thanks so much for making us part of your first listen or watch. And this episode, as every episode, is coming at you ad-free as well on Amazon Music. Special shout out to all the everydayers joining us and all the great members of the Locked On College Basketball Discord. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We are carrying on today with our team previews ahead of the 24-25 season. We've already done Kentucky, Kansas, Gonzaga, Alabama, Iowa State, Creighton, Baylor, and Duke. And now we go to Chapel Hill and the North Carolina Tar Heels. Here to help me do so is none other than our guy, Riley Davis. Riley, it's great to be here. For those who don't know, I also host Locked On Tar Heels in addition to this show. Usually I kind of but just don't let the show out. But we have two unapologetic Tar Heels today on the show. We will be as fair and as balanced as humanly possible. Riley, I think, honestly, we're probably the ones who are going to undersell this program more than anything. So buckle up for that. Let me run you all through what happened last year, and then we'll get into some storylines. Tar Heels last year, 29-8 in overall, 17-3 in the ACC, regular season champs, 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, finished 9th at Ken Palm and Torvik, 8th in the net and at Evan Mia. And it was the defense, oddly enough, that was the calling card last year. Armando Bacot rides off into the sunset as all-time leading rebounder at Carolina. And now we turn our attention to a third straight fifth-year player, from Leaky Black to Armando Bacot and now RJ Davis. But before we get to RJ, Riley, here's my first question for us. Coming into last season, if you'll recall, there was hot seat talk about Hubert Davis coming off a season in which the Tar Heels missed the NCAA tournament. I think that was firmly squashed in the ground like a bug. Why did that happen? And is there any reason for any more of that talk?
First off, let me say I would never, ever, ever criticize our head basketball coach. I would have never been skeptical of our third year front man, our front man entering his third season. Yeah, I was a pretty big skeptic after last year. Just how could you not be? Of course, that first season was electric with the tournament run, but there was half a season of mediocre basketball before that, followed by a very, very disappointing, just disaster of a year that was not fun to watch, was not fun to track. There's just almost zero redeeming qualities of that season. Then he completely retools the roster, adding Harrison Ingram and Cormac Ryan, most notably, which I remember at the time I thought those two players project as starters, but I don't really know what else UNC is going to get beyond that. I thought they still needed that, a more clear, I guess, just a more clear proven commodity. And this was it's crazy to look back on it, but we just didn't know what RJ Davis was going to be as the go-to guy in the backcourt, which that's where I got to tap my chest and say, my bad on doubting you, Hubert. You have squashed my skepticism, that's for sure. I think just in terms of all the typical cliche stuff that coaches say with toughness and culture that we can kind of poke fun at as podcasters, but ultimately does carry a good bit of importance. I think he's great at that. He's clearly got the guys buying in. I thought whatever the different schematic shifts he made defensively to get them where they needed to be a top 10 unit. When you look at the personnel, they had no business being there. When you had, I would say, Armando, an elite interior defender, Harrison, elite defender at the college level when he had the pieces around him, but still you had a small backcourt, but he somehow found a way to I think that's a huge coaching win. Of course, played really well in big games. You think you could look back at the mean, that Wake Forest win at home when Wake was coming in hot, like they're trying to get over the hump with Hunter Salas looking like an ACC Player of the Year candidate. And I think the game UNC was down 1 at halftime, outscored Wake by 20 in the second half. Like that was kind of when I knew that team could be special. And then it just continued throughout conference play into the postseason. The 2 Duke wins, of course. The Alabama loss still crushing to this day. But I think we saw a lot to like about Hubert just from how he runs his team. With schematically, personally, I'd like to see them push the pace a little bit more on offense. Maybe we get that this year. But defense was, the best UNC defense since the championship team in 2017. I just think he's an elite culture guy as well. And I hope that Carolina continues to reap the benefits of that.
So, Riley, let's get into what you just said there about the possibility of an a more up-tempo style where some young bucks, we can get out and run a little bit. No, I'm just kidding. I'm 40, y'all. I'm done, and I will pop an Achilles the second I take off. But legitimately, I said it in the cold open there about, this is a new post-Armando Bacot era. Literally, it's been half a decade since that man was not manning the front court, which is funny because the Manning cast is on in the background behind me. But in this new era where Armando Bacot is gone, where North Carolina struck out again and again and again and again and again and again in trying to replace him through the transfer portal, it's almost like out of necessity the Tar Heels are going to have to turn to a different style of play. Is that your expectation for North Carolina this year?
Hashtag no centers. Play Cade Tyson at the 5. Yeah. No, I think in some capacity, man, because like you didn't. Armando wasn't really the type of big you'd give the ball to on the block. You'd run ball screens with him, let him eat on the offensive glass. I guess they ran some secondary stuff for him last year. They got him some easy looks under the basket, but it's not like he wasn't like a Hunter Dickinson type player where you're letting him, ISO honestly from beyond the 3-point line or go ISO in the mid post and go to work. So I don't think it's going to be, it's not like the team will still play through its guards, which it played through RJ Davis last year, but I'm most fascinated to see, if you're playing Jalen Washington at the 5, assuming he starts, how much of a 5-out scheme are they really going to instill? I think Washington was really good as a roll man off of ball screens. Like he was more physical, tougher in the paint than I think people expected him to be. Yeah. I love his face-up game. I'm a little more like bearish on his 3-point shot than I think most UNC fans are at this point, to where I think you can try some 5-out stuff with him and see how it goes. But it might be more like he made 8 threes last year, very like 53% from beyond the arc, but a very, very small sample size. I think it's, hopefully there are plenty of possessions where like no one is in the paint. That'd be fun to see, but I don't know, man. I feel like Washington is still just such a wild card for what his strengths actually are. Can he play more than can he even get to 20 minutes a game this year? I think UNC needs him to, but yeah.
And I think that's a good point about, are we going to see a lot of baby blue paint opening up where as people inside and outside the North Carolina program know, this is a program typically built upon reliable back to the basket bigs like Sean May, who is an assistant coach. And I think that's why so many people are just so uncertain about what this Tar Heels team is going to be, because there isn't that. And, we saw, for example, camp scrimmages from this summer. And it was, to your point, it was just a wide open lane with all these driving opportunities, drive and kick, whatever it is you want to do, pick and roll action and whatever. That lane's going to be wide open. And Carolina, which, as you said, has the strength in the backcourt, is hopefully going to be able to utilize that with a different approach schematically this year. Now, Riley, though, to that question, RJ Davis is going to be RJ Davis, right? We expect another ridiculous season like he had last year, maybe even some new wrinkles in his game. But the big question for me with that is his backcourt mate, Elliot Cadeau, who had a solid freshman year, but clearly has a lot to work on, particularly in terms of shooting. I think that's the big thing that people are watching out for. Do you think, Riley, that Elliot Cadeau is going to be able to make enough of a jump to really make this backcourt as elite as we all hope and think it will be?
It's a good question. I think the biggest jump doesn't even need to be like scoring in double figures. I think he just needs to make let's say 30 to 35% of his threes. If he average, because I think the best version of this UNC team is going to be RJ Davis and Ian Jackson as your bucket getters. I think the best version of UNC will be Ian Jackson as the second leading scorer and Elliot averaging 9 to 10 points a game and something like 6, 7 assists, maybe 8 if we really want to push it. I mean, that's averaging that many assists in a college basketball game is tough, but I think a 9 and 7 type year from Elliot would be exactly what UNC needs, as long as he's like, honestly, not just a catch and shoot threat, but able to create a little bit off the bounce and knock down some threes off the dribble as well. I think that would really give this backcourt some juice. Because we don't have any questions about RJ. Honestly, I don't really have any questions about Ian. There's going to probably be some crazy Ian Jackson games where he shoots like 4 for 16, probably in the non-con as he's getting used to it. But I just think that kid is special. I think he's built different. He's been a top 5 recruit, like pretty much for as long as he was in the high school ranks. Yeah. Those types of dudes are wired differently. And I think even seeing him at those camp scrimmages, I mean, yes, he took some contested step back threes, but they went in. Like, I just like the way he carries himself.
When he was cooking, RJ was feeding him, right? Like that's something to note, is that RJ's not going to be afraid to let that rip. So that'll be good to see. So Riley, I want to talk more about this. You started getting into some Ian Jackson, and we're going to have to talk about him and his fellow freshman Drake Powell. I want to try to figure out which one of them is going to be more impactful for Carolina this season. And boy, we need to make some predictions for our starting lineup. We're going to get to all of that coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about Roy. Hey, college basketball fans, have you heard about Roy? It stands for Return on You, and it's a brand new platform that lets you, the fans, get involved in NIL like never before by making contributions directly to your favorite athletes. By supporting players directly, you can help shape rosters, retain talent, and keep your favorite athletes out of the transfer portal. NIL has changed the game for athletes. Well, Roy is changing the NIL game for fans. Why use Roy? Let me give you one example. Exclusive content access. When fans contribute to a successful campaign, you receive access to exclusive content from the athletes, such as their announcement decisions, behind the scenes footage, and other personal reflections. It's a great opportunity. So download Roy for iOS or Android and enter referral code Locked On, and you'll automatically be entered into a sweepstakes to win $5,000 cash. Again, join Roy.com for additional details. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited. Get the Roy app for iOS or Android and start making an impact on your favorite team. Again, use referral code Locked On for an opportunity to win $5,000 cash. Join Roy.com for more details. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited. Get off the sidelines and into the NIL game with Roy. All right, Riley, let's turn our attention now more specifically to North Carolina's personnel, both who's coming, who's staying, and who's left, and all of that. And we're going to make some projections on the roster, and I want to try to figure out which of these two high-level freshmen is going to be more important for this year's team. So the returners include 2 starters we've already talked about at RJ Davis and Elliot Cadeau. There were projected to be 4 other returners to this team: Jalen Washington, Seth Trimble, who entered the transfer portal and came back, and Jalen Withers, and then also Zayden High, who we recently found out will actually not be with the team this year. So 5 returners, and then you get 3 portalers: Cade Tyson from Belmont, Van Allen Lubin from Vanderbilt, all these smart Tennessee schools, and then Ty Claude over from Georgia Tech, and the dynamic freshmen Ian Jackson and Drake Powell, and Mr. James Brown as well. As for the subtractions, the big names to know obviously were the other 3 starters: Armando Bacot, Harrison Ingram, and Cormac Ryan, alongside Paxton Wojcik, and the only transfer last year, James Okonkwo, who heads off to be a Zip in Akron, Ohio. Riley Davis, I want to know your projection for the starting 5 out of that group of 11 scholarship players.
Do you want me to answer with my head or my heart?
I want you to I actually want both. I want you to answer whichever one of those is like what you think Hubert Davis will be, and then the other one that's, I guess, probably your heart.
The one that I think probably happens, and I would even venture to guess would be the day one starting lineup at Elon, or against Elon, would be Elliot at the 1, RJ at the 2, Ian at the 3, Cade Tyson at the 4, Jalen Washington at the 5. with my heart says it's going to be Cadeau at the 1, RJ at the 2, Ian at the 3, Drake Powell at the 4. I don't care who's at the 5, probably Jalen Withers. I just like 1 through 4. I think Withers catching lobs, blocking some shots, doing athletic things, and probably just, effective but small role offensively would be, and you let the other 4 guys cook a little bit, would probably be the most fun lineup, and the one that I could easily see being like the closing one for UNC.
Yeah, and that's a good point there, because so often, Riley, we all focus our attention on a starting 5 when more often than not, it's the closing 5 that really truly is the thing that matters. So folks, don't just watch for that starting quintet. Make sure you're watching for who's going to get us out of here in the final minutes of the game. Riley, I'm really intrigued. By the way, your lineup of what you think Hubert Davis will do is the exact same of what I think Hubert Davis will do. Elliot, RJ, Ian, Cade, and Jay Wash. I'm really intrigued and haven't put much thought into the other lineup you mentioned. And let's just go 1 through 4, as you said, with having both freshmen in the starting lineup. That's a potentiality I haven't really considered, because anytime I've thought about it, I've said Elliot, Cadeau, RJ Davis, either Ian Jackson or Drake Powell, Cade Tyson, and Jalen Washington. So talk to me and talk to us more about having both of those guys in your starting 5.
They're the 2 pros. I mean, I think they're the only 2 guys on this roster you can say for sure will play in the NBA. I think RJ and Elliot will both get shots. I've gone on the record on podcasts before saying I think Elliot Cadeau gets drafted. Like, I could see him being a 2nd round pick, but you're looking at 2 dudes who are projected 1st rounders. And I think, a lot is made about like the lack of size that this UNC team has, and for good reason. I would love for Carolina to have a 7-footer, or at least a dude who's 6'11" who can block shots and rebound. That would be sick. Would make me very happy. But just looking at the sport over the last few years, there are plenty of teams that run guys at the 4 who are like 6'6", 6'7". That's not going to be that big of an anomaly.
Is a great example.
Yeah, he's 6'7". I mean, Ingram's 6'7". I know Ingram was like super well built too, but I even go back to like that Kansas State team who made the Sweet 16 with Marquise Noel. I'm pretty sure their 4 was like Cam Carter, who's 6'3".
Oh, that sounds right.
They ran like 4. I'm almost positive they ran 4 guards around Naquan Tomlin at the 5. So we're like, we've seen teams find success this way before. Maybe it was Keontae Johnson was kind of the nominal 4, 6'6".
Right.
Anyway, same difference. 6'6" still. That's the point I'm trying to make.
It's doable. That's what we need to know.
And I just think it's only a matter of time before Hubert realizes, well, I don't even need to put it that way. He probably already knows. Like, it's only a matter of time before it's like, my strength is in these perimeter guys. My strength is having 2 pros on my roster to go with a 5th-year All-American. Like, yes, I'm going to play them together. And like, who knows what Drake Powell is like as a rebounder? I haven't watched enough of him to say. I can attest that I think he'll be the best defender on the team, and that includes Seth Trimble. That's my hot take. I love Seth. It's not a slight towards Seth, but I think Drake is just different. Plus, he can create out of ball screens a little bit. Like, you let him like that's going to create mashup problems if you put the ball in his hands. I'm a huge Drake Powell fan, and I just think eventually it gets to the point where it's like, let's just play the 4 best players together and then find whichever big is going to play the best defense and rebound the best, and then let's rock out.
Because that's the thing, is like, with whoever's playing the 5, it's not that they have to be phenomenal. They just have to be serviceable. They just have to not be, below replacement level player, right? Because if your strength is in your backcourt and your less strength is in your front court, you know what? You got to I don't care what conventional basketball wisdom is. You got to figure out a way to utilize that strength. And I think what you're suggesting, Riley, would play into that. So let me ask you this question, because you talked about these 2 pros, and I think you're spot on with it. I'm not going to hear me not asking us to answer the question, which of these 2 guys is the better basketball player, both short or long term? What I want to ask is, which of Ian Jackson and Drake Powell is more important for this team?
Okay, so I want to give a shout out to 2 of your regular guests here, Pat Kilby and Coach Bill Robinson, because I feel like both of them would very much have the coach hat on here and talk about how Drake does all the little things, does all the hustle plays, best defender, connective guy who does things that don't show up on the stat sheet. Well, guess what? I am not a coach. and Ian Jackson is nice. And sometimes it comes down to that boy nice, and he's a bucket, and he's going to be more impactful.
It's incredible.
I love both, though. I love both Ian and Drake. I'm so excited to watch them. But yeah, I think Ian's going to be more incredible just because he puts the round orange thing and the 10-foot thing.
And also a hot take. In order to win this game of orange hoopy shoot with peach basket, you got to be the dude who puts that round orange thing in the 10-foot thing more often than the other team. And so I think ultimately at the end of the day, because of that, because of his offensive threat that can come in bunches, as you were talking about earlier, you know what else that does? That opens things up for RJ Davis a lot more. That opens things up for Elliot Cadeau a lot more. And Cade Tyson to just rain threes from wherever he wants to, or Drake to do what he's doing, maybe even gives Jay Wash opportunities to do what he needs to do a little more effectively because of the sheer scoring threat that Ian Jackson is. And so, Riley, I was coming here ready to say Drake Powell is my answer, but I'm going to get on board with you.
But
give me some IJ. Give me some IJax as well, which I've never called him until this moment, but I kind of like it. And I don't know if it's going to stick for me or not. But
well, he's already Captain Jack, which is a pretty sick
Captain
nickname,
Jack.
though.
Yes.
Captain Jack is tough to beat.
It's tough to beat Captain Jack, honestly, and he leans into it really well. All right, Riley, we got to get to talking schedule and our schedule predictions. This is a loaded non-conference schedule. Before you even think about getting to ACC play, the Tar Heels are going to be very well prepared once they get into those conference games. We're going to unpack that in just a second. Right after I tell you about FanDuel. You've heard me talk a lot about FanDuel this summer, America's #1 sportsbook. And this summer, FanDuel's been giving you a boost or a bonus daily, man, for getting in on the action. I got something a little bit different for you from FanDuel, because right now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. And then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. How about some Wooden Award odds, Riley, while we're talking the Tar Heels? Because, of course, RJ Davis is right up in the midst of this thing. Hunter Dickinson leads the way at plus 550, followed by RJ Davis and Mark Sears, who will face off yet again in this season at plus 600, right behind Hunter Dickinson, followed by Caleb Love, ironically enough, and Janai Broome from Auburn at plus 1,600. Rounding it out is our homie Cam Jones from Marquette at plus 2,200. So if you want to get in on any of that action or get this NFL Sunday Ticket opportunity, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Riley, we're going to move into talking about the schedule now, but one thing I do want to make sure we just hit on and mention that is kind of a wild flip from last offseason to this offseason. Last offseason, North Carolina lost approximately 8.27 million players to the transfer portal. Technically 7. All right. Caleb Love, Puff Johnson, Dontrez Styles, Tyler Nickel, DeMarco Dunn, Justin McCoy, and Will Shaver, the pride of Birmingham, Alabama, plus Simeon Wilcher decommitting and winding up at St. John's. This year, as I mentioned earlier, the Tar Heels and Hubert Davis only lost one transfer to the transfer portal this year, and that was James Okonkwo, who, God bless him, from coming from West Virginia the year before, just wasn't going to matter yet again on this team. And so I love him getting the opportunity to go to Akron, where hopefully he can get a little bit more run. What does that continuity do to help set up, and this is kind of leading into the non-conference schedule, being a more cohesive team as you get right into non-conference play here?
It's a great question. For one, I got to give some love to James. I love James. I talked to him at Media Day last year. Great vibes. We talked about UK rap music, which was definitely a highlight of the season for me. I had high hopes for him. I thought for sure he was going to be just like a great backup to Armando. Anyway, sometimes you miss in this business. But that's a great question, because I think like the continuity, I don't know, man, because like some of the returners just didn't play that much.
Exactly.
Like Jalen Withers, this has been a discussion in the Locked On Tar Heels Discord before. Like there was that stretch of games in mid-February where he played single-digit minutes, I think 6 of 7 games or 5 of 6 games or something like that. Yep. And I know his minutes got a little more regular, but he still was, I think, on like 12 minutes per game on the season, Seth, I think, was 16, 17 on the season. Washington was 8 on the season, to where it's nice to have, like, I think it's good to have like a Seth Trimble type, and even, Withers is kind of seeing it all from being on a 4-win team to being on a 1 seed in like less than 365 days. And he's old. I mean, he's in his 6th year, played a ton of college basketball. Like,
that's right.
Yeah. I think those guys kind of knowing what it takes to get to that level helps. I just am not sure how much when outside of RJ and Elliot, they were all bench guys.
And that's the point I'm wanting to get to. There is more continuity, but again, outside of RJ and Elliott, not a lot of continuity that played a lot of minutes, partly because Hubert Davis just doesn't typically play his bench much, if at all. In his 3 seasons, you ready for this, Riley? His first year, used his bench 19.8% of the time, 348th in D1. 2022-23, 18.3% of the time. That was 360th in Division 1. And last year, Hubert Davis finally cracked 20% usage of his bench, 22.6%, all the way up to 332nd in the nation. So really curious to see this year how Hubert Davis will use the bench depth that he has. Will we see it go beyond a top 7 or a top 8 and get into using guys like, there's just lots of possibilities there. And so we will see what happens. But here we go, Riley. Non-conference schedule. Carolina's going to have 3 preseason opportunities to see him in action. The blue-white scrimmage on Sunday, October 13th. A charity exhibition at FedEx Forum where Carolina last played when Luke May was sending Kentucky home in 2017. That's Tuesday, October 15th. And then hosting Johnson C. Smith on Sunday, October 27th. But the key non-con games, I'm not going to bother with the bye games, but Carolina is at Kansas on Friday, November 8th. That's Friday, the first week of the season, by the way. Hits a true road game at Hawaii on the way out to Maui. That's not a high-level non-con game, but it is a true road game, so I want to mention it. And then the 3 games at Maui start with Dayton on Monday, November 25th. Then either Auburn or Iowa State in round 2 the next day. That's going to be legit. And then wrapping Maui up with either UConn, Michigan State, Memphis, or Colorado. The other than notable non-con games, Wednesday, December 4th, hosting Alabama. Dear goodness, the Tar Heels need to get a win over Alabama in the ACC-SEC Championship. ACC-SEC Challenge, excuse me. That'd be fun. An ACC-SEC Championship at the end of the year. I'm here for it. We just stumbled into that. Then Tuesday, December 17th against Florida in the Jumpman Invitational. And the other notable non-con game is Saturday, December 21st against UCLA in the CBS Sports Classic up at the world's most famous arena, Madison Square Garden. Riley, what do you make of this non-conference slate?
Man, I kind of want to give you some bold predictions as I look about this. I know we were just going to talk about our projections. I want to get into the games already and give you some analysis. Let's see. Okay, let's start. Elon, easy dub. At Kansas, Hunter Dickinson might foul out all 4 of our big men. That's my bold prediction. I think Kansas wins, unfortunately, handedly. Like, I just need Carolina to keep it close I know that's a loser's mentality, but 30 minutes. Give me 30 minutes of good ball, of like giving me hope, and then let Kansas pull away, and I can at least say, like, okay, we got something to work with. Let's see. From there, American, that's a win. At Hawaii, I hate that they scheduled that game because I just wish we would duck a little bit of smoke with how hard the schedule is. If people don't know about Marcus Green, Hawaii's point guard, Houston Christian transfer, let me tell you. No, I'm just messing around. I don't know anything about him. I'm just looking at their roster right now. Kind of looking at the makeup of Hawaii, even though it's on the road. Like, even their front court is very slow and unathletic from what I've seen, to where I think, I know people malign UNC's front court woes this year. That should not be an issue even on the road against a pretty solid mid-major. Maui is the one where, like, as we were doing our projections for this, I'll go ahead and say I have Carolina going 9-3 in the non-con. Got very, very close to picking 10-2. I think there's a chance that Carolina just loses at Kansas, wins Maui. I think it's a great draw for UNC. Wow. And then I like them to beat Alabama at home. I just think UNC is due. That game, like, go back to the Tennessee game last year. The Dean Dome was an incredible atmosphere. Like, one of the best atmospheres I've ever seen. And it seems like the type of game that like I just like UNC in that spot, home game after Thanksgiving, where they're ready to show that, hey, it's still UNC here. I know we've had some recruiting woes, but like we still have one of the 2 or 3 best players in the country. I'm really high on Alabama as like a top 3, top 5 team. They have a lot of new pieces to integrate as well, to where I think there's a chance you can get them before they fully, what's the word I'm looking for? Like materialized into what very well could be a juggernaut by the season's end. But then if they beat Alabama, I think they drop a dumb game to either Florida or UCLA, probably Florida. I think UCLA kind of stinks.
Yeah.
I could see UNC winning that game by double digits, but Tar Heel fans will be familiar with this name. Sky Clark goes off for like 25 or 30, but it doesn't really matter. That's kind of what Sky Clark did at Louisville, but just going to have better pieces around him, to where I think UNC gets that one done, but might drop one to Florida or something.
Okay, so ultimately, Riley, you're landing on a 9-3 non-con.
Yeah, I say they lose one in Maui. Again, with my heart, I think they have a good chance to win it, but just with the questions in the front court, I'm a little bit hesitant to fully say like, yeah, they're going to go win Maui.
That's almost exactly where my head went with all this. I have a 9-3 non-con as well, with losing at Alabama, losing at Kansas, probably dropping one at Maui, and then just as you said, a hiccup somewhere, which is kind of par for the course. As a reminder, then Carolina will have 20 ACC games. The home and road opponents, always Duke, always State, and then this year Pitt is one of them. Home only, BC, Cal, Georgia Tech, Miami, SMU, Stanford, UVA. Road only, Clemson, Florida State, Louisville, Notre Dame, Cuse, Virginia Tech, and Wake. Riley, I know we don't have the time or scope to go through all 20 games, but how do you see that playing out?
Yeah, I have Carolina going 14-6. Road losses, I bet they probably lose at Clemson, lose at Wake, lose at Louisville. Those are 3 that I'm like, if they can win one of those, I would consider that like a
success,
a nice triumph. Yeah, probably lose at Duke as well. Maybe they lose at Pitt. I think they probably drop one dumb game. Maybe it's at Pitt or something. That's like, dude, seriously. This team has sort of given us fits. Hopefully
not Pitt.
Yeah, hopefully not Pitt. The home only games, BC, Cal, Georgia Tech, Miami, SMU, Stanford, UVA. You should win all 6 of those and cover.
7.
Maybe Miami. Oh, sorry. Yeah, 7. Maybe Miami. They have some really nice guards, but like they probably won't be able to guard anybody. Like you should be able to protect the crib pretty well.
Yep. 100%. So ultimately, I'm going 15-5 in ACC play for a regular season total of 24-8 for the Tar Heels. And look, that might be a little bit optimistic, but I think all these backcourt pieces figure it out as the season goes on. And I think for me, that's good enough for the Tar Heels to be the back-to-back regular season ACC champs. And I know it's going to be tough to get over all that Duke talent, but I think Carolina's experience ultimately wins the day over that with Duke.
I have Carolina going 14-6 and finishing second. I do have Duke winning. I know Duke never wins the ACC regular season, but I think that the talent gap is just pretty clearly ahead of the rest of the ACC. It doesn't mean I think they probably split with UNC with the actual games, but man, if you look at the ACC as a whole, even Carolina, like I feel pretty confident in UNC's talent, like as the second most talented team in the league, but it's the hole at the 5. You know, we don't know what we're going to get. Louisville, I think, that's my third team. They're almost the reverse of UNC. Their wings and their front court, I think, is going to be really good, but I have a ton of questions about the backcourt. I'm not a Chucky Hepburn guy at all. I think I think they could have done a lot better, especially now like all the NIL funds that are coming into that program. But I think, dude's forgetting his name. The JMU transfer at Louisville, Terrence Edwards.
Edwards. Yeah.
I think Terrence Edwards and Cason Pryor are.
I like Cason Pryor.
They're both probably like 5 times better than anyone Louisville had on the roster last year. Like they just completely clear anybody. Yes, Louisville the past 2 years was a dumpster fire, but to just have 2 guys out the gate who are going to be a breath of fresh air, who are just light years ahead of anybody who played in the Kenny Payne era. I think that's going to be a big boon for them.
All right, so ultimately, based on Carolina's record, I have them, Riley, finishing as getting a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. Not quite as good as last year. I think that brutal non-con will kind of hurt them a little bit record-wise. And I think second weekend is the goal for these North Carolina Tar Heels. It's just so hard to say, yeah, this is a whatever team just because of the unpredictability of the tournament. But I would say Elite Eight is a great thing to aim for this team. Riley, where do you have the Tar Heels landing in the NCAA tournament?
So I said a 3 seed. It's like I feel like I've been skeptical or just like a pessimistic UNC fan over the past 6 months. But then I look at the schedule, I'm like, they can win a lot of games in the ACC. And if you throw in non-con wins over, let's say you get one at Bama, let's say if you beat one of, like, if you beat Auburn or Iowa State, if you throw in a UConn win, like those wins are all going to age really well, to where it's like maybe like 3 is pretty reasonable, might even be too low. But I still feel like the front court issues bite them in like the Sweet 16. I would say Sweet 16 finish.
All right. Love it. All right. That's your North Carolina Tar Heels preview, folks. Stay tuned tomorrow. Andy Patton, my co-host, will be joined by our great Houston host, Parker Ainsworth. And so we'll get our Houston Cougars team preview on tomorrow's show. Make sure to stay tuned for that. If you haven't subscribed to the show on video and audio, you are missing out and you don't want to miss a second. Make sure you subscribe. If you haven't joined the Locked On College Basketball Discord, man, we would love to have you in there as well. It's free to join. The link for that is in the show notes. As always, I want to say apologies to the Lawyer family. Let's go Wildcats. And until tomorrow, and big thanks to our guy, Riley Davis. Peace.